Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani and Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani and Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm story expert who's supposed to be treading on the dark side. Thank you very much, Lani and Rich.
And I'm film scholar who came back wrong, Noelle LaCroix. And we're here today to talk about Smashed, the 9th episode of season 6.
Smashed aired on November 20th, 2001. It was written by Drew Z. Greenberg and directed by Turi Meyer.
Still Pretty is a full-spectrum rewatch podcast. What on earth does that mean? It means it's entirely possible that we will talk about any individual episode within the context of the entire run of the show. We will spoil the house down.
I love that.
You know, if rats could dance, they probably wouldn't gnaw so much. All right, let's go on patrol. In Smashed, Buffy comes upon a regular everyday mugging and goes about taking on the muggers. When Spike rushes into her defense, goes after the human muggers and gets a splitting headache. He complains about the migraine and asks Buffy for, I guess we could call it comfort? And Buffy leaves, saying she will never kiss him again. He proceeds to shout misogynistic invective at her, and you know what? Fair enough. He's fucking evil. Alone in Buffy's house, Willow pulls Amy the rat out of her cage and suddenly has an idea. She calls for a magical sheet of vellum and reads the spell on it. Amy the rat becomes Amy the person and experiences a mild disorientation.
Hey, remember the trio? Yeah, they're back. They break into a museum and steal a giant diamond while bickering about who gets to use the blowtorch. The security guard confronts them and they freeze him with their freeze ray. At the house, Amy is trying to process what she's missed, thinking it's about time for prom and hoping Larry will ask her. Willow tries to break the news gently.
Amy, 3 things we have to talk about. 1, Larry's gay. 2, Larry's dead. And 3, high school's kind of over.
Buffy comes home and tries to talk to Willow about what's been happening with Spike. But then Amy comes out of the bathroom and we get one of the Buffiest interactions ever.
How have you been? Rat. You? Dead. Oh.
Amy goes for some cookies, not cheese. And Willow asks Buffy what she was going to say, and Buffy leaves to go talk to Amy, who tells her about the frozen security guard. Buffy goes to check it out, and Spike's already there investigating. Or waiting for her to investigate so he can see her. Potato stalking. He tries to talk to her about the kisses, and she says he's making too big a deal of it. He says a man can change, and she says he's not a man, he's a thing. She tries to walk away. He tries to stop her, and she hits him. He hits her back, but there's no resulting migraine. So he pretends there is and immediately goes out to feed, psyching himself up for the kill, but then...
Dawn and Tara go out for a movie and a milkshake, and Tara has the divorced dad talk.
You know that I will always be there for you, right?
Dawn tells Tara that Willow's been better about stuff, which either means she doesn't know about Amy or she's lying, but she's a kid who wants her family back together, so either way, no shade on Dawn. The Scoobies have research night at the Magic Box, and Willow uses magic to hack into files and find out about the frozen security guard. Anya calls out how uncomfortable Willow's use of magic is, considering everything that happened with Tara, and Willow rationalizes. Spike goes to the trio to get Warren to look at his chip. Warren agrees and tells him his chip is fine. Spike tells him not to tell anyone and stalks out of the lair.
Nothing wrong with me. Something wrong with her.
Willow goes home and finds Amy, who wants to go out instead of going to see her father. Tara and Dawn come home to an empty house, and Dawn manipulates Tara into staying and watching TV with her until Willow gets back. Tara agrees. Meanwhile, Amy and Willow go to the Bronze and use magic to play pool and put shitty boys in go-go dancing cages. At the magic box, Xander, Anya, and Buffy talk about Willow and the magic, and Buffy over-identifies with the idea that Willow's giving into the seduction of being bad. She leaves, and while walking home, Spike shows up in an alley. He taunts her, and she hits him, and then he hits her back. But it doesn't hurt.
How?
Don't you get it? Don't you see? You came back wrong.
Spike and Buffy fight. She thinks his chip is malfunctioning, but he says no, she came back a little less human than she was. They fight, crashing through the door of an abandoned townhouse. At the Bronze, Amy and Willow have fun with their magic, changing the band, bringing in goats, having a grand old time. When they get bored, they change everything back to how it was. Willow wants more, and Amy clearly has some ideas. Back in the townhouse, Buffy and Spike fight and taunt each other until finally Buffy kisses Spike. Wrapped around each other, they smash into walls, cracking the house. They have sex and fall through the floor into the basement. And credits. All right, Noelle, so before we get into my usual shtick of being like, hey, what'd you think about this episode? I got to say that this is not a complete narrative. I know this. I know that Smashed and Wrecked are one narrative between the two of them, that it is a two-parter. Yet I didn't put it in the calendar that we would do both of them at the same time because I just wasn't thinking about it. So we're going to split it up into two discussions, but this is not a complete narrative. This episode exists in the context also of Wrecked, which we will come back to next week. But I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. So, Noelle, what did you think about the first half of this story called Smashed?
I appreciate this episode for a number of things it does. I was also very surprised that we were here already. Like, what? Like, this happens. This happened. The stuff that happens in this episode happens in this episode? Like, I don't know. I don't know where I thought we were in the series. Like,
I know.
What the hell?
No, I thought there was more too before. Yeah. But it's just once more with feeling tabula rasa, and next thing you know, they're fucking the house down. So yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, and fair enough, right? You know, when you're so lonely and traumatized, you have to fuck a house down about it. I mean, relatable.
Yeah.
Relatable.
Yeah.
Honestly. Yeah. I mean, do we want to jump right into Buffy and Spike?
Oh yeah. Okay, look, let's not pretend that with everything else that this episode does, and there are some really interesting things that this episode did, let's not pretend that the defining characteristic of this episode is not fucking the house down.
Yeah. Literally.
So let's have that discussion.
Literally.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, here we go, right? Like, Buffy.
Yeah, let's do it.
Buffy drives this whole sexual relationship with Spike. She initiates everything. And I like that he calls her on it. We'll get into that a little bit when we get to talking about Spike and some of the language that he uses. But I'm kind of into Spike's, I don't know, the way that he talks to Buffy about how she approaches this. But what I find most interesting about the Buffy-Spike sexual dynamic at this point is that Buffy seems to be struggling with some shame about the kind of sex she wants to be having. Because it's really, it's really easy to say, like, Spike doesn't have a soul, Spike's not a person, he's a thing, I won't go there. But when Buffy lays into Spike about being in love with pain and tells him he's screwed up for enjoying getting beat down, I think she's doing some serious projecting.
I mean,
And I'm going to pause here because this is a slippery slope I'm treading on. There's a lot of no meaning yes type dynamics in the Spike-Buffy relationship. There's also a lot of Spike telling Buffy the truth about herself. E.g., I know what kind of girl you really are stuff. And that comes with a lot of like patriarchal, gendered baggage.
Men telling women who they are has a long and storied history of evil within like the world, you know. Men defining the narrative. I mean, part of abuse is that the person who's hurting you is defining the narrative about how they're hurting you so that it looks like that's not what that is, you know?
Yeah.
And we have a lot of that in various, you know, power systems throughout like our culture. That said, I think that in the particular of Buffy and Spike, there is something really interesting in the fact that she does initiate everything. She kisses him in Once More with Feeling. We see them in the midst of kissing in Tabula Rasa, but my presumption is she kisses him. She's the one who hits him first. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You know, so like she, I mean, I really don't want to take this whole dynamic down to she started it because that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that she is definitely an active participant in everything that's going on with her and Spike. And even though she says she doesn't want it, she wants to not want it. Exactly. But in moments of passion, she literally cannot help herself, which is different, I think, from No Meaning Yes, which is a game. Well, you know, and a game that some forces within our culture like to say that, you know, her lips say no, 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 but her eyes say yes, yes, yes to justify sexual assault. That is not what's going on here.
Yeah, and there's a lot. I mean, we'll get into it more, I think, with Wrecked and as we move forward. But the whole like Buffy says no not because she doesn't want it, but because she doesn't want to want it. Again, really slippery slope. If someone says no, it means no, right?
It doesn't matter why they say no.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter why they say no. It doesn't matter even if they do really mean yes. If somebody says no, they are responsible for that no. And then anybody who hears that no has to take it at face value unless there is a previous agreement and there is a safe word of some sort. Like if this is a scenario in which people are having sexy fun and they have agreed to it ahead of time, that is different. That is completely
Consensual
different.
Non-consent
but we are talking about a literal expressed no. It doesn't matter what the reason is for why that person is saying no. If they have said no, that's all that matters. It's a no.
Yeah. So all of that preamble to say, like, I'm talking about this, my projection of Buffy in this relationship dynamic and just how interesting it is to me that she seems to, based on how she initiates things with Spike repeatedly, seems to want something that she doesn't want to want.
Yes.
And I just, like, I don't know, it feels relevant to mention the detail that Buffy has had a lot of sex with Riley. And it was never as fiery or as interesting as what happens in Smashed. Like, ever. She just never, because she just never seemed that into it.
She wasn't. Nobody was into it. It was Riley.
Well, but here's the thing. On paper, Riley was perfect for Buffy. So much so that we had to have a Xander ex machina to tell her so, so that she could go, oh, I guess you're right. He is the perfect guy, and then chase down a helicopter about it, right? But Riley was only perfect in so much as he fit into Buffy's false narrative for herself about what it means to be a quote unquote normal girl.
He was a means for her to access her kind of narrativized identity.
Yeah.
You know, so he was just an access point for her. I mean, like, let's not, you know, Riley was Riley, and he Riley'd the place up, definitely. But Buffy also has culpability, you know, in everything that happened with Riley, because she was using him to access a narrative about her own identity that she desperately wanted.
Oh, for sure.
But which was not real.
For sure. Yeah. Because, I mean, a hunky vanilla soldier guy might have been a great match for like the regular girl version of Buffy. And that regular girl version of herself that she keeps trying to access and like hang on to and has been since, I don't know, the pilot. But there was no fire in that relationship. I mean, as exemplified by the fact that when Riley was trying to rock her world in bed, she just ended up relaxed. Yeah. And that, I mean, and relaxation, like, in bed is great, but it sucked for everyone because Buffy wasn't getting her world sufficiently rocked, and Riley ended up venturing into the world of vampirism as sex work, which sucks work. It sucks work, isn't it? God damn it.
How did you miss the dad joke there?
God.
Oh, is it a dad joke if it's also a sex joke? Maybe it's not.
I don't know. Maybe, I mean...
I don't know. We're going to need an expert on dad jokes to come in and make a ruling. But anyway. It's a Noelle joke.
Anyway. Oh my God. So back to Buffy and Spike and fucking the house down, right? Yeah. Buffy has explained to Spike that when she kissed him, she was thinking about Giles in a line that goes both ways for me, in that it is hilarious, but also Buffy wouldn't phrase it like that, especially around Spike. But she says, he left. I was depressed, ergo vulnerability and bad kissing decisions. She's labeling everything about this relationship, quote unquote relationship, right, with Spike as bad because it doesn't fit her narrativized ideal version of herself.
Yep.
So Buffy scolding / mocking Spike for being in love with pain feels a lot like Buffy talking to herself. Yeah. And this scene of them fighting and insulting each other and then having sex used to bother me because it goes directly from face punching to P&V building demolition. But I'm super here for it now, and here's why. Impact play is a thing.
Ooh, elaborate.
So, okay. So under the very generous BDSM umbrella, repeated striking by or of another person consensually can be a lot of fun for everyone involved. And they look like they're having a lot of fun. Like they're...
Yes. And here's the thing, consenting adults where no one's actually getting hurt, absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, I think that a lot of this struggle for Buffy with her attraction to Spike, her desire to have a physical relationship with Spike has more, certainly as much, if not more, to do with her own sense of shame about being into kinky sex than it does her like misgivings about him being evil or a vampire or whatever, whatever it is that she labels him that week, whatever monster of the week she wants to make him.
Yeah.
So that she has somewhere to put her own shame at wanting sex that doesn't fit into the quote unquote normal girl narrative that she's constructed.
The quote unquote good girl.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just normal girl, but it's like the good girl narrative of what sex should be and how you should enjoy it. Riley was good girl narrative and she yawned through most of it, as did we. But, let's face it, like the relationship between sex and violence throughout, I mean, come on, let's face it. Vampires are outside of Buffy, vampires existed to be plucked from the culture for Buffy as seductive monsters.
Oh yeah.
Vampires
are sexy.
The neck, everything. Yeah, it's all sex. Vampires are all forbidden sex. And the association of sex with violence, which, by the way, if you go back to season 3, it always makes you hungry and horny. Well, sometimes I crave a low-fat yogurt afterward, right?
Yeah.
That was Buffy again. I mean, honestly, Buffy throughout Buffy is about Buffy's duality of identity and trying and struggling with that duality of identity between wanting to be a normal girl and yet not being a normal girl. And we have the whole identity discussion in Life Serial. You're not a shop girl. You're not a school girl. You're a creature of the darkness, which of course is Spike's narrativization because he likes the darkness because that means she's with him, but Buffy struggling with that duality of her identity, what she wants versus what she wants to want.
Yeah.
I think is really interesting. And the fact that she's attracted to Spike, I mean, well, hello, please, of course. It's Spike. It's Spike. Everybody's attracted to Spike. And so like that is only human. Not to mention that there is that relationship between sex and violence, which has already been textually brought into into the stories, into Buffy itself. We've already had that connection. And so here she is now returned from the dead after having finished what it was that she was there to do, now somehow thrown back into it. And the only thing she wants is Spike, and she doesn't want to because that's not who she used to be. But she is Buffy post-trauma, like post-death, right? If you think about death as a metaphor, like when the death card comes up in the tarot, right? Death card comes up in a tarot does not mean that you're going to drop dead, literally. It means that the person that you were is not going to exist anymore. And then the person that you become is where you're going to be, is who you're going to be. And that's going to be different. Right. And so going through these phases of growth, we have Buffy experiencing what in the text is a literal death, but what functions within the story world as a metaphorical death. She has transitioned, but she's not ready to accept who she is now and release who she was then. And releasing who she was then means releasing all of these ideas about what it is to be quote unquote normal, or, even more destructive, especially for women, quote unquote good.
Yeah.
Right? Well, virgin whore, all of that kind of bullshit.
For sure. And it's not a coincidence that this takes place in a domestic set. Like it's an abandoned house, but it is, I don't know, it's clearly, to my eye, a living space. It's not a business. Yeah. It's not a warehouse.
No,
this is a house.
That's a home.
This is a home.
And there's a real reason why it's a home.
Well, her home life home life is collapsing. Like her understanding of how things are at home
and her place.
Yeah,
her place in the world is collapsing around her. So that makes complete and perfect sense. Yeah. But to your point, they look like they're having fun. Hell yeah.
They really do.
Yeah, they're having a good time. I mean, this is the hottest moment in all of Buffy. Let's not. Yeah.
For Buffy, yes. I mean,
for Buffy.
Yes. Yeah. This is the hottest I think that we will get for my For my taste, this is the hottest Buffy. I don't know that it is the hottest interaction. I will.
No,
I feel a numbered list coming on somewhere.
Oh, I want that list. Yeah, there are a lot of very, very like intense moments in Buffy, but this is the most, I think, overtly sexual. Because the thing is, like with Angel, when she had sex with Angel, that was very much the montage of sheets and oh look, her hand is on his back, and and like everything is still very like PG, and it's not sex, it's making love, it's that kind of thing,
very
right?
romantic, soft candlelight, cello music in the background. And here's the thing about Spike. I think that if Buffy wanted candlelight and soft focus and cello music, like I think he would do that. Because I think what Spike wants is to be with her, and what he wants to give her what she wants. So if she wanted that, if she wanted like romantic vanilla sex, I think he would be into that.
I think he would
totally be into that. And I think that's why, for me, the Spike telling her who she is stuff doesn't raise as many red flags as it might otherwise.
Well, yeah. And also because we have a long history of Spike being like a seer. Yeah. That like he sees beyond the surface level of things, which is why he's so good at being able to manipulate people, as we see with the Boba Fett hijack situation later.
Dear God, yeah.
Oh God, we'll talk about that when we get there because it involves the trio, and I still want to talk about Spike because yum. But here's the thing with Spike though, like I realize as I'm watching season 6 that that the Spike that I love, like the political capital that Spike has built up with me over the seasons prior, pays off a lot, because the shit that he does in this episode episode pisses me off. Like, it's awful. And he's evil, and he's supposed to be evil, and okay, fine. But like this whole thing, when he says you're a tease, and I'm like, oh my God, the patriarchy just drips from that fucking phrase. You know, I'm like, tease, friend zone, frigid, blue balls, slut shaming, catcalling. You're so pretty when you smile. Just the tip, baby. Bitch, whore, virtue, purity, culture. Nobody asked you, Ellen. It's only a matter of time before you realize I'm the only one here for you, pet. You've got no one else. Right?
Yeah.
All of that is patriarchal narrativizing of female experience, and I'm fucking had enough of it. And to have that come from Spike drives me crazy. And the thing is, Spike's been fucking evil the whole time. I know this. But season 6 Spike, I think, is the lowest form of Spike in the run of the show. And he makes it by kind of coasting on the fumes of the previous versions of Spike that I have fallen madly in love with. And the bullshit you take from somebody you love is crazy, because I would not put up with that shit from anybody else. And it's only this time, like after I don't even want to tell you how many times I've seen this episode. Let's just say a lot. This is the only time that I've been present enough to be like, fuck you, dude. Right? You know,
Yeah.
because it's Spike and because I love him. And, you know, I find it a little bit, you know, disturbing that that's my response, that it took me that long to be like, oh, fuck you, dude, you know? But I also love that Spike, like, again, he has that seeing quality. And, you know, in the scene where he's using Boba Fett, like, he can't hurt the trio because the trio is human. So he goes for the Boba Fett. He knows exactly what button to push all the time. So I like the fact that Spike has that ability to see. But what I find really funny, though, is that here we are, you know, in this scene with the trio, and here is Warren able to build a sex bot that passes mostly the Turing test, right? You know, and that the idea that he can check Spike's chip, but he can't remove Spike's chip, and that Spike is not trying to get it removed.
Oh, yeah.
I find really interesting. I think that Spike doesn't want it out. I mean, he struggles to attack that woman in the alley, even as he realizes that, you know, this is like his nature. This is what he is. He's a vampire. He has to talk himself through it. And that speech in the alley shows that even when he believes, because he's been able to hit Buffy and it didn't hurt, so he thinks that his chip is malfunctioning. He thinks that he can hurt people again.
Yeah.
You know, so this is before he goes to see the trio and finds out that it is actually functioning and the difference isn't with him. His moment where the first thing he does is like, I'm gonna go kill somebody. And part of him does not want to. Part of him resists that. And I find that such an interesting moment in his character, because why should he resist it? Like, there's no reason. He has no soul.
Yeah.
Why should he resist it? Is that Buffy wouldn't like it? You know, is that it? Or is it that part of him has begun to identify as one of the good guys?
I mean, it's a great scene. I love that whole scene of him like trying to fluff himself up so he can do this thing that he like really identifies with doing and wanting to do, but again, like, can't quite bring himself. I don't know, it's
a interesting struggle, and I don't think that we have any actual textual answer for why that's, because it could just be that he knows Buffy would hate it, that he knows that if he kills this girl, he's crossing a line he'll never be able to get Buffy back. You know, like, I mean, it may be just simply about his ability to possess Buffy, but I don't think that it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I just love him trying to talk himself into it, because it does speak to these layers of Spike where he wants to be a bad guy, but he wants to be a good guy. And those things can't coexist. At least in the way that he has, like, built them up.
And why does he want to be good? Like, really, why does he want to be good?
That's a great question.
Being good's a pain in the ass. Being evil, if you can be evil and you have no conscience and you have no soul and you have no regret and you have no feeling and empathy about it, like, being evil is so much easier than being good, you know? So why Why is he choosing good here? And I mean, I think the simple answer is because he knows Buffy would never forgive him if he murdered somebody and all of that. But I think there's more than that. I think it has to do with identity and with that he truly kind of does want to be good. I mean, look in Tabula Rasa, how quick he was to, I must be a noble vampire, a vampire with a soul. I fight the good fight, you know, like his instant, the way that he went instantly was narrativizing his experience as a good vampire, as a vampire that is struggling to be good. And to struggle to be good with a soul, you know, is one thing, but without a soul, I think is a different thing. And of course, we know that a soul is not the arbiter of goodness. We have the trio in this episode. I mean, we have textual evidence right here for that.
No,
but it is something.
Yeah.
It is an access to real empathy as opposed to cognitive empathy. It is an access to conscience.
Yeah.
And so like whether or not you take that access is another thing, you know, when you have the soul. I find it an interesting struggle for him. And I don't feel like I have like an actual answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this episode, it reads to me like Spike. I mean, he's clearly working through his feelings about his relationship with Buffy, right? Because, like, usually I would take serious umbrage with a man-adjacent person calling a woman a tease. But here's the thing. Like, he's very clunkily addressing the thing that drives me so crazy in their dynamic, which is that Buffy is driving, but there's been no conversation about rest stops, playlists, road snacks, none of it. And of course, she doesn't have a map because she's working out the relationship in real time and also not wanting to be in it. So she's driving a car that she doesn't want to be operating. And now I need another metaphor to like throw into the mix here. But so he's like, he's using this word. He uses this word that's like really terrible and loaded, but also
it is incredibly loaded. Yes.
I mean, it's very Spike-like, but in using that word, he is bringing up this thing that we've seen repeated over the last couple of episodes and, you know, through Buffy's entire relationship with Riley, which is she doesn't want to talk about it. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. She's like,
her communication
doesn't want to talk about it. Doesn't want to talk about it. And so I don't know. I like the detail that the woman he chooses when he thinks that he's going to be able to feed kind of looks like Buffy. A little bit.
Yeah.
He's like he is clearly working something out, right? Because it's not just that he's fluffing himself up. He's also like, she thinks I'm housebroken. She doesn't think I'm dangerous. Like,
exactly.
He wants her to think he's dangerous. Like, that is part of the identity for him as well. Like, it's such it's such a great contrast, right? Because I think deep down he wants to be good, because that is his nature as a very good dog.
Yes.
But I don't know. It's like there's a power thing. There's something there. There's something there. I mean, Spike's whole position on what he quote unquote should be able to do is just fascinating to me. You know, in that opening scene, he says he should at least be able to attack criminals. And I mean, I appreciate Buffy coming down on the side of even humans who do harmful things are still humans.
Right.
Like, I love that kind of soft on crime approach. You know, in fiction and in the real world.
It's not soft on crime. You hold people accountable for what they do, but you recognize that they are still fucking people. And you treat them with respect and with compassion because of that. I'm sorry. That is just my minor political rant. Anyway, yes.
I say soft on crime is like delightful shorthand. But yes, I mean.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Also, and also, Buffy, you know, if I'm going to extend this to Buffy is all, you know, bunched up about what she does and doesn't want, like feeling like what she wants sexually, because that's the only way that she feels she can access any of this fire that she's missing. You feeling like what she wants is bad and wrong.
Right.
This kind of like people who do bad things are still people. I mean, yes, absolutely true. And again, talking to herself about making what she has deemed to be bad decisions. I don't know. It's a rich text. It's a very, very layered
rich text.
It
is. It's so interesting. And I like the fact that there is some ambiguity there, that we're not really sure. Like, there's a number of ways to read this text with which the text is not, have conflict. Like, you can read it in a number of ways and see it, which I really kind of love, because I'm not really sure that there is there is one answer to all of these things. I think that there's multiple answers, that, Buffy is talking to herself, but she's also, talking generally about, general things, and what is badness, and what is goodness for Spike, and what is badness for Buffy. And they're both struggling to kind of move in the other direction. Even though they're both struggling to move in one direction when they both want to move in the other direction,
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that internal struggle, and the way that it, like, again, me and my identity stories, I fucking love identity stories, and these are huge identity stories for both Spike and Buffy.
Yeah. And then while Buffy and Spike are going through it, we get this interesting almost parallel with Willow and Amy. And I mean, so again, I'm not sure how much time has passed.
Yeah.
And that only kind of sort of matters, because when we get into, like, obviously Willow is clearly still using a lot of magic, and her friends are noticing.
Yes.
And of course, this is the episode where we get Amy back from Rat Amy. But before Willow de-rats Amy, she's talking to Rat Amy. And it's an interesting monologue. I was going to say conversation, but it's not a conversation. It's an interesting monologue, because there's no reason for Willow to lie here while she's holding this rat. But her description of the breakup is that Tara left for no good reason. And oh God, it's so hard to hear.
Yeah.
That's so the trappings of the most baked in denial.
Yeah.
But because I love Willow, it feels gut-wrenching and tragic, not red flaggy and abusive.
Right. That political capital that people have built up, Willow and Spike, are kind of reprehensible throughout a lot of season 6. And yet, previous love.
Well,
And
it also makes me wonder whether I'll like Willow less if I loop back around and watch the whole series again when we're done here. Because this is a rewatch for me, but it's been a while.
Yeah.
And I wonder about like the immediacy of here's this behavior that is really reprehensible, and then just like rocketing back to the beginning of the series, and that going, getting that Willow.
Although by the time you rocket back to the beginning of the series, you've been through season 7 Willow.
Yeah, that's true.
And season 7 Willow is a Willow that is living through consequence.
True.
So we do see Willow, like, it's not that Willow can't ever be bad. Because clearly she is being really super terrible throughout this whole thing. From the moment she, made Tara forget a fight, like through season 6, she's got real issues and real problems with her behavior. And her choices are, like really, really bad. And she completely fails to see like the moral issues that are at play here, but we also see her go through all the consequence of that. And to me, that's the difference between like a character that is, I think that somebody's forgivable when they look at their actions, they try to make it right, and they try to not do that again, and they struggle with the consequence of what they've done. Then I think that there's, that's all forgivable, and then you can let it go. And then by the time we get to the end of season 7 with Willow, she's already back in my good graces. Yes, I forgive you, Willow.
Well, and that is the thing, right? Like, I love Willow. I love to see her anytime she's in a scene. I'm just here for it.
She's incredibly lovable.
But it is fascinating to me how much that built up shield of my loving this character cuts me off from things like, just the way that Willow uses magic to shape the world to her liking is so reminiscent of Jonathan magically making himself powerful and beloved. And it's it's not that different. And yet I have this these character appreciation goggles on. And it's
yes, that's me and Spike. I look at Spike and I think I love him, and then I see him behaving terribly and I'm like, oh, and I mean the same thing with Willow. There's the love goggles are on, but yeah, I mean it's not the first time we've compared Willow to Jonathan in Superstar, and it's not a flattering comparison. It's real bad.
But it's interesting to me just how much that bad behavior, I don't know. There's something about it that even when I'm like, oh, this is not good, I still kind of love to see it. I'm still
yeah, no, when there's somebody you love doing things, even if those are bad things, you still love them.
Yeah.
And that makes us sometimes not see some things, you know, and it's love is a powerful blinder in a lot of circumstances.
Yeah. Up to and including fictional characters. Very interesting. Maybe especially including fictional characters. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, which brings me to this, Willow's, we've heard about her overuse of magic, right? You're using too much magic.
Yes.
But one thing that Tara says that doesn't really get the kind of weight put on it that, maybe it would in a different story is Willow using magic incorrectly.
Yes.
Tara says that's not what magic is for, which is a fascinating, philosophy that is, over here adjacent to the narrative somewhere. But I feel like not de-ratting Amy earlier is one of the best examples of Willow using magic, quote unquote, incorrectly.
Right.
I mean, because here's the thing, violating Tara's mind is just ghastly. We've talked about this. We've talked about, it's horrible. Because that is something you absolutely should not do. But we're repeatedly told that Willow doesn't turn Amy back because she can't. Yeah. And I'm sorry, what? Willow can't bring Amy back from rathood, but she can move Glory, a literal god, through space? If you're going to ask me to buy that, you have to explain it a little bit. And I don't know. I mean, this is one of the things I bounce off really hard because, I mean, it could be that this is it's hard to undo someone's, it's hard to undo a spell that someone else did kind of thing. I could see that. If Willow used the wrong combination of words or ingredients, could she make Amy more a rat? Has she been trying? Maybe she's been trying and it's just not working. If you try to thicken a stew with flour when you started it with a roux, because apparently that doesn't work. My oldest is taking culinary arts this quarter, which means I'm taking culinary arts this quarter.
Welcome to pandemic homeschooling. Yes.
I mean, and I think, Lani, you suggested that Willow just doesn't care about Rat Amy while Tara is around. And I mean, this episode feels like good support for that. Right?
I think so. And I think that, I think that Willow, at the time that Amy ratted, Willow did not have the skill to bring Amy back. And I would say probably because it's very hard to undo somebody else's spell. And also that when you're still a novice, and you're trying to do something at that level, like she could do something terrible to Amy, and I'm sure she was probably just being careful, and just didn't want to take too much of a risk with somebody else's actual lived existence, But then I think at a certain point she just stopped thinking about it. Like she was just thinking about other things and more interested in other ways of of experiencing magic and doing magic. And also Willow, her solipsism here is showing a little bit because I just suddenly realized I could.
Yeah.
Well, if you suddenly realized you could for a long time. You just didn't want to until now.
Because there was no
because
benefit.
You needed a buddy.
There was no benefit to Willow.
Or,
There was no benefit to Willow in bringing Amy back from rathood.
Right.
I mean, she literally says it's nice to have another magically inclined friend around. And this is only after Tara has left. And on the one hand, it's like, okay, that's very sweet. Like, of course, having someone around who like gets it and shares your interests is important. And on the other hand, oh, sweetie, no. Like, we've already seeded Willow's magic use as a maladaptive coping strategy for something. Is that ever really addressed? But more importantly, Tara recently called Willow out for magically arranging things and people to her liking, which is exactly what Willow does with Amy.
Yeah.
And also, I can't believe I haven't addressed this before, but I love the foreshadowing of Dark Willow that we get in the opening credits for season 6. Because we get that clip.
Yeah.
We get that clip of Willow storming Laurie's castle with her all black eyes and flying knives. And without context, I would absolutely guess that a character who looked like that was a villain.
Oh, sure.
So, like, we are very much on the, like, Dark Willow trajectory here.
Yeah.
And it's rough. But it's also so fun to see Willow and Amy. See, I'm so bunched up about it. It's like I love them together. I love how fast Amy and Willow's night out goes from magical pool playing, which is like, come on, man, just one drink, to Amy using magic on the woman at the bar, which is a lot. To fucking with every aspect of the Bronze, not just the sexist and homophobic dudes, but like everybody.
Right. Yeah.
That escalated very quickly.
It did. Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I don't know. I mean, we'll get more of it. We'll get more of it next time, but oh boy.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have a lot more discussion with Amy. The thing that I find really interesting about Amy is that she is very much like as a character, not a character. Like she is there as a method for like in the text actually uses her, as something that is about Willow. Like Amy is there to be about Willow. And she's kind of funny and she's kind of a joke. She also comes back from 3 years as a rat with perfect hair and makeup, which drives me the fuck crazy because women are not allowed to look like women. Like they always have to be completely made up, which drives me. I just watched this. There's a German show on Netflix called Dark. And I watched that recently and was amazed that the women just were allowed to look like people. They didn't have a lot of makeup on. The women who were active and respected characters within the story had wrinkles, had gray hair.
Whoa.
Didn't wear makeup. Their nails were short and bedraggled. And it was just allowed. And I was like, holy shit, I didn't even realize all of this, the ways in which women are allowed to exist within certain stories, within certain representations, and especially within American storytelling, American visual storytelling, versus other countries. I highly recommend that everybody watch Dark. It's really tough. It's tough. Let me tell you, it is tough, and there are warnings. I give you all the warnings if you're at all sensitive. I'm very, very sensitive to certain particular things, and it hit a lot of my sensitivity points, but it was also really, really interesting, so I stuck with it. But the thing is that the way women are presented in in everything that we consume in American culture is that it is not acceptable for a woman to look like she's just been a rat for 3 years. Like she's not allowed to have that. And I have a similar rant if you listen to the Listen Up A-Holes episode in which we discussed Ant-Man. And spoilers, minor spoilers, but Michelle Pfeiffer is in a quantum realm for 30 years, and yet somehow there's a Sephora there. Because when they finally find her after 30 years in a quantum fucking realm, she has perfect hair and makeup. Oh, fuck off. Also, not to mention 30 years of complete social isolation, and she's fine. You'll hear that rant over and Listen Up A-Holes. You can go ahead and do that. But this is the kind of thing, like the presentation of women, that drives me crazy. And, my first response when I had this thought, because my first thought was like, oh, right, she's got hair and makeup, please, which makes me... My first thought is like, that's not an interesting criticism, right? Because there's this whole idea about it's not realistic. And when you're talking about a fantasy show with demons and vampires and everything, the idea of requiring realistic from that, I think, is a little bit wrong. It needs to be believable. It does not need to be realistic. Those are two completely different things. So I have this concept that I've been talking about for years, which is basically that fiction is not answerable to reality. And I have also used that in a very specific sense of reality is no defense for fiction. So that if you're writing something, as I've had writers say to me, but that's the way it really happened, and I'm like, doesn't matter. It's not believable. It's not emotionally believable because it needs to be emotionally anchored. Fiction exists to deliver an emotional experience, and when you're working in the emotion, you're working on a different level than actual lived reality. And there are some instances in which fiction is not delivering an emotional experience, like your hardcore mystery or sci-fi, where it's just purely an intellectual experience. Either you're undoing a puzzle, you're figuring out a puzzle, or in the other case, you're talking about some like deep philosophical what if questions, which is what sci-fi does best. But we still find that most of those stories, especially now, also involve an emotional arc, because that is really kind of what we go to our fiction for, is to have these emotional experiences. And because of that, fiction needs to be emotionally believable. And we are not telling Amy's story here, so we can just make her pop out of living as a rat and immediately go to work as an antagonist for Willow, without addressing the idea that someone who had been kept in a cage for 3 years would be deeply affected and traumatized by that experience. Amy shows up in the story fully formed, and that's okay. I don't appreciate the fact that like all women have to have perfect hair and perfect makeup all the time, because the message that sends to us as women is that those are the only ways in which we are going to be seen, and that if you have a wrinkle, if you don't have makeup on, if you're not, like perfectly formed, if you don't have the perfect body, the perfect hair, blah, 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 that you are essentially invisible and therefore don't matter, which is exactly what women are made to feel in our culture. Pick up a feminist book, it's all there. Anyway, but going back to fiction, like, in this particular instance, like, it's okay that Amy is not realistically experiencing the fallout from the trauma of being a rat, because that's not why she's in the fiction. She's there as a support tool for Willow, which also I don't particularly care for. I think every character should be there on their own for reasons of their own, but that's not how they're using her, so fine. But one of the most pedestrian complaints about fiction is, that it's quote unquote not realistic. And one thing is that it's a really easy nit to pick, because fiction isn't supposed to be realistic, so it's not going to be realistic, so get the fuck over it. But it's also an irrelevant nit, and I'm just as guilty as anyone with this as anyone else, because anybody who's listened to me on Still Dead knows that I'm always like, where in the world does Angel get the money to upkeep a hotel? Da, 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 da. Because that stuff just drives me nuts. Like, it's just these things that, like, the lack of any kind of reality kind of breaks through the fiction for me sometimes. But at the same time, it's not a useful criticism. It's not an interesting criticism. But a woman with no access to hair or makeup suddenly appearing magically perfect as the result of a magic spell is fine. Whatever. It annoys me, but whatever. It's not Amy's story. But it is a solid opportunity to talk about the relationship between reality and fiction, and that usually that's not realistic is not an interesting criticism.
Yeah.
Except sometimes when you're talking about Michelle Pfeiffer in a porn film.
Well, Michelle Pfeiffer, Michelle Pfeiffer
annoying.
is both a real person and also just not realistic, like full stop, as a person.
Yes.
So that's fine.
As a person. Like, well, yeah, because women in Hollywood are not allowed to be real.
Yeah.
You know, watch some Dark People. It will fucking open your eyes. It was crazy.
But just to piggyback on the, like, that's not realistic complaint, like, I am also super guilty of this. What I do...
Oh, I do it all the time.
What I do find to be an interesting, maybe not criticism, but a discussion point, and something that I'm always interested to hear from other people is, what is it that pulls you out of this narrative?
Yes.
Like, what is the thing for you? Because it's often really funny. Like, people will sort of show what it is that they are super nerdy about, because they'll be like, oh, I was totally in your, magical fantasy world until this person said this. And then I was like, oh no, that's not how trees work or whatever. And then, like, suddenly
what's powering that kick?
Yeah.
Raw enthusiasm,
Yes.
right? We have that from
Exactly.
Buffy. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
certain areas of expertise will absolutely kick you out of a narrative. And that does happen. I think it's fair to acknowledge where you get kicked out of a narrative,
And it's fun to talk about it. And actually, perfect segue. What does it say about me that Dawn's shake, that Tara claims is a lot of shake, just looks shake-sized? It's just like a...
I don't think it's
like
you.
a regular. That's
I
like
think
a
it's
milkshake.
the fact that everything in America is huge. It looks like a huge milkshake to me, but it's if you're gonna have a milkshake, like, if you're not having one every day, if you're gonna have a milkshake on the rare occasion when you have a milkshake, just fucking have a milkshake.
It doesn't even look like that big of a milkshake. Whatever, it's fine. It's fine.
It's pretty big to me.
But what I love about that whole thing is that Tara is still, like, momming Dawn.
Yeah. Oh,
it's very sweet. The, like, promise me you'll eat something green, leafy green, not gummy green. Like, so cute. And also, oh my God, how have I not talked about Tara and food yet? Characters and food is my favorite thing. How have I not done this? I'm clearly not doing my job because Tara and food are almost as linked as Spike and food. And one of the biggest things for Tara post-Glory is being fed. We see a couple of people. We see Willow feed her, and we see, I think, does Anya help feed her, or is it just implied that Anya's going to help feed her?
I think it's implied.
There's something about that. But, like, that is it's a big visual, what am I trying to say here? It's a big visual leitmotif in her post-Glory, mental state that she needs to be fed. And then when Willow and Tara are playing house, Tara's feeding everyone pancakes, which will come back next episode in a heartbreaking little mini beat that just smashes my heart wide open, but it's fine. Tara is the first one to accept Buffy's post-Angel visit offer of fried chicken. When they've all had dinner, and Buffy's like, oh, okay. And then Tara's like, well, I, for one, would love a piece of chicken. And it's like, oh, the communion of takeout. And, like, Tara is all about, like, the food and caring for people. It's very, very sweet. And I don't know. I just love it. I love it. Tweet me more examples of Tara and food, please.
Yes, get somebody feeding Tara though. Like the only time Tara gets fed is when she is in the post-glory, circumstance. But Tara feeding others, Tara providing the nurturing. I am not at all surprised to see that happening quite a bit in the show. But this whole interaction with Dawn and Tara, which is heartbreaking to me because it has that, it very much has this divorced dad kind of, I'll always be there for you. This isn't about you. You didn't do anything wrong. Mom and I just couldn't make it work. All of that kind of stuff, I think is really interesting. And also there's this moment too, where Dawn is telling Tara, right, that Willow's been really good about vaguely stuff, right? We don't talk specifically what it is. We talk around it. And at that point, Dawn seems to be kind of shifty about it, and I don't know if it's just that she's like really hoping that Tara comes back and that she thinks that Willow hasn't been, doing magic, or if she doesn't know about Amy being deratted at that point, or like what's going on. I don't know if she's lying and just to get Tara to come back, or if she doesn't know. But it's kind of it's kind of an interesting, sweet, and really sad moment where Dawn's like, well, Willow's been really good about stuff, which is, it's such a heartbreaking kid moment.
Well, and that's another one of those, well, like, how long has it been since our last episode? Kind of feels for me like because it feels like a while. And I think maybe the Willow is being really careful about stuff just means that Dawn hasn't seen her do anything really overt, because we know that Willow is just, doing whatever. And I'm pretty sure Dawn doesn't know about Amy at this point. It feels like maybe I don't know.
Maybe she would. I mean, it's the next day. If Amy's sleeping on the couch, I mean, Dawn's a kid. Maybe she doesn't notice, but yeah, I don't know. It seems, but also like Dawn may not know that Amy is not just a rat. And when there's an Amy person, she may just not make the connection. I mean, there's a million things. Like they don't tell Dawn. Dawn does get a lot of protection bubble around her, where there's stuff that she just doesn't know. But I love this interaction though with Dawn and Tara. And I think it's just so incredibly sweet. And heartbreaking and sad. And then when Dawn and Tara go home and Tara's so uncomfortable, but Dawn is like, I'm here by myself. And she snuggles up on her shoulder to watch television. It's just, God, it's so heartbreaking. I mean, cute. Dawn's already lost one mom, and to lose another one is so hard.
Oh God, it's so painful. And they're having, they have a great little, what feels very like age appropriate relationship talk. When Dawn is like basically asking for clarity about the future of Willow and Tara, and is like basically like, yeah, just to confirm, like, you still love her, right? Like, this is not, which is so heartbreaking. And Tara, kind of gently explaining, like, she says very much, and then she kind of, really concisely is like, this is what's going on. And it's especially heartbreaking because, of course, Dawn has always been really interested in Willow and Tara. Like, from Dawn's first appearance, she's interested in Willow and Tara.
I mean, and Dawn and Tara. Like, I mean, the outside playing, thumb wrestling, when Dawn gets sent outside because she's not supposed to be in the magic shop with the dead body, who goes out and thumb wrestles with her? It's Tara. And, like, there is a deep closeness between Tara and Dawn.
Yeah, and Willow wanting to share magic with Dawn, whether or not that's a great decision, questionable. Yes. But, like, this dynamic is clearly a strong relationship that is beneficial to all of the parties. Yeah. So Dawn having to grapple with her mom's splitting up is a big deal. Like, there's a lot of emotional weight on scenes that are themselves very small. There's kind of not a lot of there.
We don't do a whole lot with it. We're basically just setting up so that Tara's there when Willow and Amy get back from their magical night the next morning. We're setting up that conflict in this episode. So we're not doing a whole lot with it, but it is an incredibly heartbreaking heartbreaking couple of scenes, and sweet and, sad, and it's really nice. It's nicely done. There are very quiet scenes in an episode that is otherwise very loud.
Yeah.
There's a lot of loud moments in Smashed that can take this Dawn and Tara, dynamic and kind of push it into the background. But it is really emotionally powerful, and I think that it's really, really good. What's not good, is like the trio.
Oh my God.
Whatever.
Warren showed up in the Previously On, and I was so annoyed. I was like, oh no.
Oh my God. Yeah.
These guys again.
Exactly. It's like, ugh, this again? Jesus, we had some time without these guys, and I really was fine with that,
Yeah.
and they're here. Like, I like the Boba Fett thing just more because of the character moment for Spike necessarily than the really stupid fucking nerd jokes, which, oh my God, the thing that I hate about nerd jokes, right, is that they work from the outside in. Because they're about these external qualities of these people rather than being like internal about who they are as people. A good humor comes from character. Like when you've got Spike in Tabula Rasa, we kissed with the rising music and the rising music. What was that, Buffy? Like, that's a funny moment. All of Tabula Rasa, like their humor in Tabula Rasa is based in character. And we get to explore that humor when we see these characters out of their own context because they don't know who they are. That makes that work really, really well. But these, like the humor with the nerds is just, they're nerds. They care about who the best James Bond was, And
they're kind of weak. Like when the whole joke is, these guys are kind of not super manly. I mean, we've talked about this too, but it's like, like really, come on. I mean, there's one exchange that I find really adorable, and it's between Andrew and Jonathan when Warren is using the blowtorch or whatever, and Jonathan or Andrew asks why Warren always gets to use the cool things, and Jonathan says, because I'm allergic to methane and you're still afraid of hot things, which is so cute. But then they completely ruin it with the line that follows it, which is, besides, the tank kept making both of us tip over, remember? Which is not as good a joke. Just leave it at...
You've got the inside out joke and then you've got the outside in joke, and the inside joke works better.
Allergic to methane and still afraid of hot things is vulnerable and adorable.
Yes,
in a really pleasant, unexpected way. But like, these guys are small and a big tank would knock them over. Like, it's not. No.
Warren's not that much bigger than them.
It's not. It's not.
I mean, So all of it, like, honestly, Andrew glides by on the charm of Tom Lenk. Like Tom Lenk, I think. And, Danny Strong, we get a lot of charm from Danny Strong as Jonathan. Jonathan, I've always had, and in most of my watches, I've always had such a soft spot for Jonathan. I've always really enjoyed him and liked him. And again, it's coasting on the love goggles, because Jesus Christ, what he did in Superstar was terrible. And we see that Jonathan is weak in exactly the way that is, examined in this season throughout all of his run. And, I peed in the pool. Like, I mean, he was just a kid then, but still, there's just stuff about Jonathan. Jonathan is not a great guy, but Danny Strong has such incredible charm. Tom Lenk has such incredible charm. And Adam Bush as Warren is really, really good as Warren. It's definitely not charming, but it's a very good and accurate, representation of 4chan, the type of dude that Warren is, But you get these three, and the best you can do with the jokes is comic books, Star Wars, Boba Fett. It's humor that punches down, and that generates from the external rather than the internal. So like, I just like, everything pretty much, with the exception of like the joke that you pointed out, which I thought was really cute, is just irritating with these guys. And I get they got to be there because they got to like examine Spike's chip and like whatever. And of course, they're stealing the diamond that is going to play a role later in Gone, although we really don't need to set that up. But in the end, like, who cares? You know, Spike could have known that his chip was working fine when he tried to kill the girl, and he couldn't. He could have made he could have left that girl in the alley saying, nothing wrong with me, something wrong with her, and you could have left the trio right out of it.
Yeah. They're such a bummer. I'm so tired
They
of
are
them.
Already, and we're only on episode 9.
I know. How?
All right,
how
let's
are they
finish
still
up
here?
by talking about. I know. Let's finish up by talking about something delightful. Let's talk about Anya.
Okay. We don't get very much Anya in this episode, but the Anya that we get is so good.
Yeah.
And also there's this line that she has that's a little bit eerie. She's talking about, they're talking about the diamond and like what its deal is. And she says, maybe it's cursed. Diamonds are excellent for cursing, says the woman with a diamond engagement ring on her finger at the moment.
Oh,
hello.
Very interesting. I did not pick that up, but you are so right. Yes.
So
absolutely.
good. So good.
Mhm.
But I absolutely adore Anya being the one who is totally fed up with everyone's bullshit, and it's just like, oh, for crying out loud, and then says the thing that everyone is worried about with Willow.
Yeah.
And it's great. Like, I love her. I love how observant she is. And then, of course, she turns to Xander and goes, is this that thing that I do that you were commenting? And he just,
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh.
And he gives her that look of shaming her when in reality, is this the thing that I do, being the only person who's brave enough to actually speak about what's going on here? It's fucking kick-ass, Anya, and that should be a reason why he loves you, not why he shames you. And oh my God, when is hell's bells happening?
Right? And her whole little rap on responsible people where she's talking about, she's talking to Buffy about here's why we should be worried about Willow. When Buffy's like, Willow's responsible. She won't do anything bad. And Anya's like, actually.
Yeah.
And of course,
let's go back to Old Faithful.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, or
in
Old Yeller.
Doppelgangland, right? Right, or Old Yeller.
Reliable? Like,
reliable?
Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Like, we know what happened here.
Exactly. Willow's got a bad girl side. She's going to eat that banana, even though it's not lunchtime.
Thank you very much. Yeah. It's the gullet for you, mister.
Oh my God. Now I want to watch Doppelgangland again.
Right? Oh, that would be
I love that
fun.
episode.
Let's do that again.
So
can we
good.
We'll just go back and do Doppelgangland instead of talking about the trio. How about that?
Exactly. Every time we want to talk about the trio, let's just talk about Willow and Vamp Willow outfit.
There you go. Yes. And then Anya has probably the most timeless and eternal line of this episode, which is optimism. I remember optimism.
Oh my God.
I'm like, same, Anya. Same.
Same, baby. Same. Yes.
Yeah.
I remember hope. I had a little bit of that recently. I had that feeling in my chest that was like, and I was like, what is this? I know I felt this before, but it's so unfamiliar. And I was like, oh, that would be hope. Yes. So yeah. Interesting.
For a split second there. She's always great.
All right. So, Noelle, I see in the script here that we have a girl power moment of the week.
I just jotted down this quick little thing because I was like, hell yeah. D-Rad and Amy with the whole plate of cookies. Just sitting there watching TV with her whole plate of cookies. And we know from Witch that Amy has a tricky history with food. So I'm happy to see her.
Chocolatey baked goods. Yeah.
I'm happy to see her enjoying her post-rat plate of cookies. It brings me joy. And also, oh my God, food on this show. If I had to write a master's thesis tonight, like if somebody was like, okay, time and money are not an issue, master's degree, go. I'll be like, okay, food on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, that's what I'm going to do. I don't know.
Yes.
Very cultural studies, but
Absolutely.
I love it. I love seeing a woman enjoy a plate of baked goods all by herself with the TV. That is my idea. My idea of a good night in.
Yeah. It is a good night in. It is absolutely a good night in. So what's your favorite part of Smashed?
So it's a tie between Elizabeth Ann Allen just killing it with the whole just got back from being a rat thing. Like everything is great.
Yes.
I know she's only kind of a character, but the performance just does it for me. So
yeah, she's amazing. I love her. That performance is fantastic.
Yeah, she is great. And my other favorite part is Spike calling Buffy at the magic box on the phone.
Oh.
And what I love so friggin' much is that he is trying to be all ominous. And she just keeps going, Spike? Spike? And finally he goes, bloody hell. Yes, it's me. And when he says that, the ominous music just cuts out of the soundtrack.
Oh my God. It's so cute.
So funny. It's so funny.
It is. But I mean, of course it's him. Who is going to call and be like, Slayer, in this sexy British accent? Like, I mean, like, did he think that
what
he was...
What does he think he's doing? Who? Get it together, Spike. Like,
I know. A little self-awareness, Spike, goes a long fucking way.
Oh, my God. But it's hysterical, and it's so Spike. Yeah. It's the Spike that I love the best. The Spike who's like, I'm out of here, and then falls into an open grave. That's my favorite Spike.
Exactly. That is definitely my favorite flavor of Spike. Well, my second.
Your second favorite flavor of Spike. Lani, what is your favorite part of this episode?
Oh my God, fucking the house down. Like, that is the thing from Smashed that I always remember, that always stays with me. And I gotta say, like, it's good.
It's good. It's good.
It's good. It's really good.
Good. Oh my God. Especially when Buffy, right before they do it, says, where the hell do you fit in? And I'm like, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. Like, I have a place that you
we all know the answer to that rhetorical question.
It's not good. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Oh.
Oh no, do not apologize.
The sex jokes and the dad jokes are strong with me today. If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, connect with the show on Twitter. Follow @Chipperish and use the hashtag StillPretty.
This episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now. So thank you to our November producers: Shelly, Kristen, Jonathan, Rose, Erica, Alice, Abigail, and Sarah. And this week's special message for our power producers: come on, rush me. It'll be funny.
To find out how you too can support Chipperish Media, visit patreon.com/Chipperish. Other ways to show your support: write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or remember optimism.
We will be back next time with the other half of This Story Wrecked, the 10th episode of season 6. Until then, so, how you been?
Rat. You?
Dead.